everybody, I'm here with Gabe Kapler. Gabe, first thing I want to know is how is your Spanish? Because I hear that you are aprendiendo.
Mi español más o menos. Necesito practicar más.
Why is that important for you?
I just think it's important for me whenever I can to be at least showing that I care enough to try with our native Spanish-speaking players. But one of the things that I think is a challenge in the industry is I don't necessarily think that our native Spanish speakers get the same information in real time that our native English-speaking players get. So we have a wide variety of leaders who can communicate with our native Spanish speakers in their native language, but I also think it's pretty critical and important that our native English-speaking coaches are making that level of effort as well.
I'd like for you to talk to us a little bit about Pipeline for Change.
So we started Pipeline for Change because we saw that organizations, teams are better with more diverse groups of leaders, more diverse groups of decision makers. And we feel like by setting that tone, we set an example for the rest of the industry. Not to be self-congratulatory about it, but I think we're showing that a diverse group of decision makers coincides nicely with winning. So we feel like other teams around the league may see that and they may want to follow suit. Also other sports. Pipeline for Change is set to be an example for other sports as well, and then ultimately for the community at large. We think businesses are better, politics are better with more diverse groups of decision makers.
And I've seen you be very vocal and acknowledging your own privilege, right? Why is that important, and how did you get to that point?
I think I had a decent example in my own mother and father, and they were leaders in that regard, and I think they helped me understand my privilege, and the further I get in baseball and in my career, the more I understand kind of the power I hold in that way, and that is something that others don't necessarily experience. People of color don't necessarily experience. Women don't necessarily experience. And so I take that seriously, and I think it's important oftentimes to take a step back and recognize it. And I'll acknowledge I can do better, right? And I think one of the things that is really important for all of us to do is to own the fact that, particularly as an industry in baseball, but across society, we're just not that good at owning where we can improve. So that's one of the ways I think we can all improve. And there are times when, I'm fairly successful at it, but again, long way to go.
What do you think the league can do to increase not only its diversity in front offices, but also obviously the diversity that we see on the field?
I think the first thing that we can do is we can acknowledge our own biases, right? So I think we tend to have biases to hire and look for people for certain roles that have similar backgrounds to us, that look like us, that speak like us, and we have to challenge ourselves in a major way to say somebody else might have a tremendous amount of value and it doesn't pop off the screen at me because of how I was raised, the people that I grew up with. And so I have some great examples on coaching staffs around the league where from a traditional standpoint, they might not look like the coach that was here 20 years ago, but now you see how incredible they are at connecting with players and how they make a staff really come together. And in order to get there, you really have to take a step back and work hard to see how incredible at their jobs they are, even though it doesn't look as familiar to you. So it's just really acknowledging where you have blind spots and biases and working hard to remove those as much as possible.
Do you think that the way that you are and the way that you see the world is one of the things that has positively impacted this team and the way that you led the team last year?
And I think there's a lot of people who are influential, both on our roster and in our dugout, in our front office. It's an organization approach to believing that diversity and inclusion leads to better environments and ultimately to winning baseball games.